What's going on, everybody? Welcome to The Strength Game, the best and only podcast dedicated to the strength professionals, coaches, athletes, and iron enthusiasts, setting the standard on both sides of the profession. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this podcast is about those deeply embedded in the iron culture as both coaches and competitive athletes. It's really about the dual player coaches, the Bill Russells, the Ryan Giggs, the Joe Quenvilles, and the Jackie Moons. All right, those are the individuals living out the strength culture and coaching athletes and really setting the standard as students of the game, all right, through constant training, learning, and improvement. They're dedicated coaches and competitive athletes and professionals who are still competing on the platform, on the field, and in the weight room, all while giving back, simultaneously impacting, mentoring, and bringing up the next generation of those athlete coaches into the strength world. So whether it's coaching at the collegiate level, high school, professional, or competing in strongman, Highland games, powerlifting, weightlifting, or any other strength sport, you can't fake experience and you can't fake strength, and you certainly can't outsource either of those. So if you want to gain quality experience and you want to get strong, you have to put in the work and you have to get in the game. Our mission is to highlight and speak to those individuals about the benefits, the lessons, the reasons behind why these coaches never stop training themselves. So really, why do the podcast? And the purpose of the podcast, really, like I mentioned before, was we want to learn about why these people are so heavily involved in strength sports and the strength coaching world and are driven to continue to train. It's our mission to create a collective community and connect these coaches who personify strength for life and basically live and breathe these long-term games, the long-term benefits that go beyond just physical strength, but embody culture, wisdom, the expertise and skill, and generally just have an appreciation for the game of strength. Because the rules are going to change. Our individual roles and goals for strength may change as we go, but the game never ends. So this show is really an homage to those coaches who are still training, who are still competing and learning from the barbell in the game. And really a kind of public service announcement to ones that maybe are coaching that are not training anymore or haven't been involved in a strength sport or are not learning from the barbell any longer. So more than just that, I really want to connect with other athlete coaches, and I want to highlight their stories and experiences and give back to the profession and our iron community. And those are the three things that I'm really looking to accomplish, and those are ultimately the purpose behind the podcast. But selfishly, I want to just talk shop with some like-minded coaches and athletes and really experts in the field, swap some stories from their time involved in strength sports and coaching at different and various levels, and basically share some more ideas with both these coaches and athletes that are best representing both sides of our field in the profession. So more than just connecting with the coaches, though, I want to display their unique perspective and their backgrounds in hopes that someone might be able to learn from their lessons or take something away from their story and maybe be inspired or compel them to action or joining the profession or joining a different strength sport. In the end, I really just want to take these lessons and speak to these different individuals and bring everybody a little bit closer to reaching their own success, both in weight room and in life. Because we all know there's no real right way or one path in the strength game as coaches or as athletes. So even though we've all taken similar situations, we've all been taking vastly different approaches to that, and our paths are completely different to getting where we are. And I'm really interested in hearing these guest stories and showcasing them for more listeners who are interested in the profession, competing, or are just in part of the strength game in some other capacity. I think we all share an affinity for training and for the barbell. It's provided us a lot of strength, both in performance and for life. So because of all the time that I've spent training personally or competing or involved in coaching in some sort of capacity, even in the weight room or as an athlete myself, all the time I've spent learning from fellow competitors, training partners, both past and present, and colleagues in the profession of coaching, as well as my own mentors and sport coaches that I've had along the way, I want to pay it forward and in some way give back to this exceptionally unique community. I think that we all strive to surround ourselves with people on the same mission as us or like-minded people. And you see that from our colleagues, assistant coaches that we work with, when we go to conferences or when we compete in certain sports. You see the community that's evolved together. So I really want to focus with the podcast on those in the strength game who are coaching and mentoring and giving back to the profession, that are still simultaneously continuing to stay deeply rooted in the iron game and are personally competing and training themselves. I think that's a big thing for any coach. So through the show, the main objective is to connect with these other similar dual athlete coaches in the profession and find some ways to collaborate, improve, and ultimately raise the standard together. So with that being said, who am I? Like I said, my name is Nick O'Brien, and I'm the host of this podcast. And why am I qualified to kind of lead this thing? Wouldn't say qualified, but I think that I bring a unique perspective to this. And just like anybody that is involved in strength sports or involved in coaching and athletics, I have a passion for training and for competing. And at the same time, I love coaching. I enjoy learning new things in both of these areas, and I love the continual challenge of trying to improve both my coaching and my lifting. And ever since I got started, I thought, why can't I do both? So I figured that I could talk about this and I could definitely bring more qualified people to the show for you, the audience, so that they can speak on the subject and give you some of their unique perspective and insight. So because this is the prequel episode to this podcast series, I think it's only fitting that I give you a little bit of my own backstory and share some of my coaching and competition history, as well as why I personally want to start this project. So everyone's story is different, but most coaches in the strength game, we started off as team sport athletes. And from there, the story takes its own unique turn. My story follows a pretty similar path with its own individual outline. And just like many others, after my traditional team sport career ended, I was kind of left with a big void. And just like others in the same position, I couldn't shake the competitive itch, and I never lost the training roots. And I eventually found a new way to stay involved in sports and competition, all while continuing to put my love for training and the weight room to further use by eventually pursuing a career as a strength coach and continuing as a strength sport athlete. So when I originally sat down and kind of wanted to put the backstory, I didn't want to just slap my resume on it. But I also wanted to try to see if I could do two separate timelines of playing sports and competing and training, and then one separately of me coaching. But I found that the two are so intertwined that you can't really separate the two, which is perfectly fitting for this podcast and the show. It's the main reason behind why I wanted to do this, being centered around being a dual coaching, competition, competing relationship. So with that said, for me, it all started growing up. I'm a military brat, and I've been constantly moving across the country, making different friends and attending different schools. And I always seemed to be playing sports growing up. I remember playing baseball, basketball, hockey, soccer, and even track and field a little bit. And by the time I got to high school, I attended 2 different schools and um, playing hockey and soccer, but training really wasn't too deeply involved. Um, Progressing through to my college career, played college up until the point I got, or played lacrosse up until the point I got hurt in college, and then started picking up strongman. And then post collegiately, still playing lacrosse, still competing in strongman. Um, in the last couple years, got involved in Highland games, have been competing at a pretty high level there. And then most recently started picking up jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So, but in terms of my training, my exposure to the weight room, in my opinion, was pretty late to the game. Before I actually started, I didn't really have a mentor. I didn't have any direction or understanding of what I was doing outside of those PE classes that you're kind of forced to do initially in high school. And the sports I was playing, it wasn't really necessary if you were pretty skilled at your sport. Um, so for that matter, by the time I moved in my junior year in high school, it's kind of when I started getting involved. I had a few guys at the local gym that were mentoring me and kind of taking me under their wing later in high school, and then started opening my eyes a little bit to lifting. I was working at a gym at the same time and ended up getting my personal training certification and shadowing them a little bit, but realizing pretty quickly that that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. And I kind of shifted gears while still training and shadowing at our community college for athletic training. Um, I had dealt with some injuries in high school, and I was kind of interested in a way to stay involved in sports, and I had no idea what I wanted to do in college. So after I was shadowing, that was what my intention was, and started taking more bio classes and anatomy and some athletic training specific classes my freshman year to get involved. And then I had probably one of my worst injuries that sidelined me and pretty much wrote off my team sport career. And that's kind of where everything shifted a little bit. So when I attended Salisbury for my undergrad, basically I went in and talked to my advisor and realized that athletic training wasn't what I wanted to do at all. And I think within a 24-hour period, I had dropped athletic training, picked up exercise science, focusing on an area that was undetermined at that point. And I met a coach by the name of Matt Nine at Salisbury, and he allowed me to volunteer with very little experience right off the bat. For those that don't know, Salisbury is a D3 university in Eastern Shore, Maryland, but it's a powerhouse for every sport. And they treat it like a Division I school with how they approach athletics. So to be allowed the opportunity to work with them right off the bat with some great GAs and other coaches was an awesome opportunity. So I think that was around 2009 when I started doing that, and I couldn't play lacrosse anymore. Ended up playing just club for the majority of my time at Salisbury, and then started working with some of the GAs there. Andy Deck and Mike Hedleski were huge. Those guys were competing at very high levels in their sport. Mike is a big time power lifter. I think he pulled 814 in a competition. Andy Deck was a professional strongman at that time, still is. And those guys allowed me to shadow them and really see what they were doing in the weight room. And I started falling in love with that and realized that that's what I wanted to do. So the rest of my time as an undergrad at Salisbury, I was working with them, volunteering, helping out with the teams, and getting as involved and in depth as I possibly could. Started competing in strongman at that time too, in like 2010, and did my first competition in 2012 and won. And I was just pretty much hooked from there. So that was really my first introduction to strength conditioning. And from that point on, that's what I felt like I really wanted to do. It really was solidified when I went to Georgetown and got my first Division I internship. I can't thank Mike Hill and Sean Foster and Carl Johnson enough. Those guys, man, if you could see the video I sent them, the DVD I sent them with my resume, it was awful. And they let me come lift, and I was still injured at the time, and somehow they took a chance on me. And that experience working with them and seeing how a big time program ran and was operated, and seeing that their camaraderie, working with each other, and just the environment that a kind of humming strength conditioning office looks like, when the office was on the gym floor, which is the coolest thing ever. Um, that really, after that time there, when I came back for the next semester at Salisbury, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Ultimately, from there, I got into the grad program at Salisbury, was accepted, and became a graduate assistant working with, again, big sports there, men's lacrosse, women's lacrosse, football, and baseball were all four mine, my time there. Ended up interning at Loyola during one of the summers, and learning some different things from there. I think you could take anything from any situation. It wasn't necessarily stuff that was groundbreaking or that I was going to add to my program, but what it did do was give me some more exposure to other teams, different coaching styles and philosophies. And it solidified that what I was doing was the approach I wanted to take, which is a good thing to do in a young career as well. I ended up going back to Salisbury after that. And I think, just like most people in this field, it's kind of getting saturated now, and everybody likes their profession and this exercise science and coaching field. That when I was done grad school, I thought that I would have a job, and I think I applied to 164 places before I actually ended up getting a full-time position. But in that time, I moved back to my hometown in California, put my stuff in a storage unit, parked my truck at my buddy's house, and went home, continuing to apply to places. Luckily, John Francis at San Diego State allowed me to intern with them. In the meantime, same thing, a lot of exposure, learning some new stuff, seeing what the West Coast was doing. Before I finally got my first opportunity as a full-time position back at Loyola in Baltimore. So same thing, packed up, moved back, primarily working with men's soccer. And like I said, I like to thank all the people that helped me along the way. And Mike Marciano, Matt Dwyer, Steve Nichols, the coaches at Loyola for men's soccer, those guys taught me everything. They honestly took a chance on someone that probably had no business being their coach, and I learned so much from them along the way. And it was awesome exposure. It really got me to the position I am today. So after working from there, in 2016, I accepted a position here, which is my current one at Fresno State University. So that's kind of my coaching tree and where I've come along through the process. And like I said, there's been a lot of things that were training and coaching have intertwined. There's a lot of people that were involved in the process and that I can't thank enough. And that's why I want to kind of do the project and show both sides of coaching and competing and how they're intertwined, the community, and really just the community and the strength culture kept me intrigued and is a reason why I wanted to stay in the profession. I really enjoyed both aspects of training, preparing, and really the goal, the dedication, the desire, the discipline it took. If you wanted to achieve something, you had to put everything into it. And that's really what drove me to it. I felt like with my training, I could better relate to my athletes and cite personal experiences. So I always wanted to train, and I found a new sport that I could compete in. So it kept me driven, and my athletes could see that. And it was something else that we could relate on. I'm never going to be able to play women's tennis, and there's no way I can play every sport that I've been able to coach. But I think that the relationship that you see between you competing, having a goal in mind, and your athletes seeing that speaks volumes. So same thing, learning from lessons and mistakes that I've made, personal experience that I can help my athletes potentially avoid those mistakes. And at the end of the day, like I said, I never really thought of training and coaching as being separate. And since ever I started this as a volunteer, as an intern, through my grad assistant to full-time positions, those two have always been synonymous with each other. And I can't see a point in time where I won't be training, maybe not competing in certain things at a high level, but a point in time where I'm not pushing myself, setting goals, and making sure that my athletes understand that I'm not going to give them something I haven't done before. And we're in this together at some point. I've been shaped by the barbell. I want to show you what it's provided me. And that's what really keeps me interested and involved in it. So the same thing I share with my athletes that really kept me ultimately interested and even started in the strength game are a bunch of my favorite and most memorable stories. I like to share those with my athletes, with fellow coaches, because they're very significant to me. And honestly, throughout my career, and the passion and performance training, that's what's driven it. And the collection of stories that have come from actual experience of actually coaching and actually training and putting myself on the line and competing and critically questioning all of these things, my philosophy, how I program a certain exercise, how I feel on a certain subject, what are the topics I'm going to tell to my athletes. um, you have to critically question all those, and you're constantly learning. So again, with the stories and everything, those things set the tone and have set the tone for my last decade that I've been coaching, training, and competing. Like, I still remember all those things, and what keeps me constantly driven to be the best I can, when I'm training and when I'm competing and when I'm coaching. Like, I remember the times back training in powers and in the Bury weight room, or in the many different versions of the storage unit where we train strongman training, to me first getting involved as an intern in the profession and coaching, and taking information from those other grad students and articles that they're giving me just basically through a fire hose. It, and commuting to different volunteer opportunities and seeing how other programs and staffs work firsthand, from those stories to my first competition, and my first nationals invite, finding a passion for a new sport and having some success in it, even to my first like real cutting weight and getting lost in a city, to being a GA, to trying to juggle classes, playing the club sport, lacrosse, and training, and my own teams, and a somewhat active social life too, to really my first time full-time job, having my own weight room and no oversight. These stories have really had an impact on me and are deep-rooted reminders that have shaped me as an athlete, as a coach, and as a person. So knowing just how much that these personal experiences have made a lasting impression on me and my career, I want to hear other people's stories, their rite of passage, and the spark that got them interested in both pursuing strength conditioning as a career and what got them into their respected strength sports. Like I said, these are the exact type of things that I want to discuss with our guests. So what better way than to actually get them on and ask them? And that's, in my opinion, how this podcast came about. So enough about me, more on the Strength Game podcast and what you guys can expect. On each episode, we're going to be covering topics from those leading the way in strength sports and the coaching profession, from coaches and athletes that are actually down in the trenches and on the front lines of the game of strength. So our guests are experts in the field. They're going to bring a wealth of knowledge, experience, and perspective that will provide new ideas, insight, and hopefully some inspiration. We're going to discuss topics ranging from everything about training, coaching, all things high performance, and a lot more. From firsthand knowledge from strength coaches in a bunch of diverse roles, such as high school, collegiate, private, pro ranks, and competitive athletes in a wide range of strength sports across a multitude of competition levels and experience. So across the board, really, all our guests are experts in the field, and we all have a lot to learn from them, so you really don't want to miss out. So if you're an active athlete, an active coach, you're involved in either of these things, or if you're just part of the Iron Brotherhood, you love strength sports and the barbell, you love athletics, you love coaching, and if you appreciate or have been shaped by all things physical culture, but most importantly, if not more, um, it's for those coaches who believe in practical experience, who continue to educate themselves, push the boundaries, and aim to be well informed for the athletes in which they teach. So whether you're a rookie in your first year, a seasoned vet, someone considering a career in the profession, or competing in a strength sport, if you're a coach, you're competing, you're still training, or you just enjoy learning, this is for you. So when it's all boiled down, this podcast is for anybody and everybody involved in the strength game. So what's next? Episodes are going to be released weekly, so be sure to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform to stay up to date. Every episode can also be found on YouTube, and by searching the Strength Game Podcast or following the links on coachobrien.com. That's COACHOBRIEN.com. And you'll see in the menu tab there where the podcast link is. It'll have the schedule, upcoming episodes, and past episodes. You guys can listen to it, whatever your best method is. So while you're on any of these platforms, please consider leaving us a review. Any feedback, any criticism, any comments, concerns you guys have, let us know. Again, this is for you. This is for strength coaches. This is for those strength professionals, iron enthusiasts, and athletes. This is for you guys. So any feedback you have, I want to hear. If you have suggestions for people that'd be great potential guests on the show, if you have comments about anything, please. And if you like the show, please leave a 5-star rating, as it really helps us improve and it gets us into the ears of more athlete coaches like yourself. So also, if you have another coach, athlete, or person that would benefit from this podcast, please pass it along to them, share it, repost, and just spread the word. We want to get this out to as many people as possible. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make this the best and only podcast, all right, in this platform for athlete coaches, for those competing and coaching. So with that being said, until next time, signing off, go out and crush it and get in the strength game.